Tune into the Green and Growing program on Eagle Community Television with Holly Dickman, Ellis County Horticulture Agent. Holly will identify common lawn and garden issues and provide up-to-date information weekdays at noon and 9 p.m. on Channel 14. Green and Growing. Brought to you by Eagle Community Television and Riedel's Garden Center, a full-service garden center west of Hayes on Highway 40 next to the Bickles-Schmidt Sports Complex.
Well, it never fails. As we get into the middle of the summer, I get lots and lots of phone calls about grasshoppers. And this is another year that grasshoppers seem to be extremely bad, a terrible pest in the garden, a terrible pest in the landscape. And if you see grasshoppers in the yard, they can do damage to just about anything. So they can damage flowers, which I'm sitting next to here. They can damage your garden plants. They can even damage shrubs and trees. And so I get lots of questions about how to control them, what can you do about them, and there's a couple different things to consider. There are many different types of grasshoppers and they can all be treated similarly, but the main thing is you want to remember that as the season goes on, those grasshoppers mature. And so I have one in my hand here that's actually still in the nymph stage. It's not fully mature, its wings haven't fully developed, and this is when they are a little bit easier to kill. Actually, I would like to see them even smaller than this to have good control over them, but you want to make sure and try to control them before they get to that big mature grasshopper stage. And so they are easier to kill with insecticides if they are not mature. They are also less likely to move around as much if they were a little smaller. So the big ones we've been walking around here a little bit have been flying around and just hopping all over the place. There are many different insecticides out there on the market labeled for grasshoppers, and sometimes people will spray their garden or their flowers and think that they've had an insecticide failure, and really they probably haven't. But as you all know, grasshoppers do move and they fly and they hop, and so a lot of times you might kill what's actually there on the plant at the time or maybe in the next day or two, but then new ones will move in. And so when you go out to look at the garden again, you might think, well, gee, that insecticide didn't work at all. But actually it probably did. It probably killed the ones that were there at the moment, but new ones have moved in. So it is something that you have to be a little bit persistent about and maybe treat more than once. If we're talking about a flower garden or maybe shrubs or trees, there are some insecticides that you can use on those that you cannot use on your vegetable plants. Things like orthene, which contain a chemical called acephate. Those things are a little more systemic, so they actually move into the plant and they have a longer residual, and they may also be more effective on some of those bigger hoppers than just those babies out there. If you have some other insects, in your garden, some grasshoppers in your garden, you want to make sure and read that label closely and make sure that it is labeled for vegetable plants, first of all, but also for the vegetable plants that you have in your garden that you want to treat. So if it's labeled for pumpkins and safe to use on pumpkins, you can go ahead and use it. If it's not labeled for pumpkins, we can't recommend that use. So you want to make sure and read the label. I've had some calls from some individuals that have maybe used some things on their garden that they probably shouldn't have had they have read the label closely first. If you have questions about grasshoppers, like I said, they are a very big, significant problem in our landscapes and our gardens every year. This year's no exception. Don't hesitate to call the office or your local extension office for more information. Reporting for K-State Research and Extension, Eagle TV, this is Holly Dickman, Ellis County Horticulture Extension Agent.
Tune into the Green and Growing program on Eagle Community Television with Holly Dickman, Ellis County Horticulture Agent. Holly will identify common lawn and garden issues and provide up-to-date information weekdays at noon and 9 p.m. on Channel 14. Green and Growing. Brought to you by Eagle Community Television and Riedel's Garden Center, a full-service garden center west of Hayes on Highway 40 next to the Bickles-Schmidt Sports Complex.